that I need all of the lights to build some brakes. I do this shit for real.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a filler panel for this area between the grill and the radiator support. This is that C10 that we just wrapped up. It came back for installing the gear set. And then ever since I finished this truck, or we finished this truck, when I pop the hood, I just can't help but think there's something that needs to be here. And I'm sure somebody builds it, but we build our own stuff, so we're going to build it again. So this video is going to be how we use our CNC table, how simple it can be done. I can put a link in the description below as far as the company that we use for the CNC table and all that. But this is just going to show you how simple you can make filler panels. You can use a grinder, you can use a hole saw bit, you know, paper, pen. You know, I done all this stuff. I got started essentially in a carport. So, and I did all this. It just might have been a little rough around the edges because I didn't have the nice equipment to do it, but you can still have the same outcome. Just a little bit more time with the grinder, a little bit more time with the Sharpie, paper, whatever you want to say. But this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to step through every way of how we're going to do this. All right, so what we're going to do is we're filling in here. So I know this is where I'm working with. And the way I'm thinking about doing it is having it come straight down, and then we'll notch this out here, and it's going to come up to give me a lip to attach to the radiator support. Our factors are this radiator support is not straight all the way across. It is straight to a certain point and then tapers down. So we have to put that into consideration. Another thing is, you know, with that brake going flat here and then braking up to a 90 degree, we are making, so to speak, a three-dimensional item, but we are laying it down on a one-dimensional flat sheet of paper. So you have to think about that. Think about when you take a box, like a square box, and you unfold it. That's how you have to think about it. So when it's all said and done, when you cut it out of flat steel, when you fold it up, you get the product you're looking for. So that's what we're gonna do. So right now, I am gonna just do a basic drawing of the shape I know it's gonna look like, and then I'll get my measurements from there. So, be like Bob Ross, draw us a needle line. Needle line all the way across. That's our back shape here. Kind of doing this in a rough. So now we have the run to the back, and we can add the lip in later. So right now we're just building straight to the radiator support. So we have the run to the back, and then we have our little piece here towards the fender, and now we know we have an angle for the grill. And I'll show you how we find those angles. It's super simple. It does not have to get all crazy. So we have that. So that's our basic shape. Now we know we need to add a lip here, and then we're also going to have to add a notch. So I'll show you how we get all that, and I'll show you how we get our angles. You don't really actually have to get the angles, you just have to get the measurements. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this point to this point. Now we're going to stay behind this curve here, so you don't have to try to know what that curve is going to be, because we're going to stay right there on the outside and come straight up. Okay, so I'm going to measure going down. With that being said, 7.5 inches is going to give us plenty of play room. So we got, looks like we're going to have about 1/8 inch to 3/16 of play that we can work with a little bit. I'm not looking to get super tight up in there, because there's a curve in here too. So I don't want to dig into that aluminum and make it into that curve. So we know this piece here is 7.5. So on that quick little drawing, I should have got a better pen. We're going to do here to here, 7.5. Draw your arrows, that way you know to your border lines. So you know when you're drawing from this point to this point, you have 7.5 inches. All right, so now we're going to get our length. Well, we're going to stay on the other side of this hood stop. So we can, 28 is going to be tight, but 28 is a good solid even number. No fractions involved. So now, you know, from that point to that point, we're at 28. So Now you're gonna find out here real soon how you don't have to worry about this angle, because this goes in tight, you don't have to worry about it. So from the stopping point, so we're gonna kill the panel out. It looks 4.5 is gonna be a little tight, so I think what we should do realistically should be 4 3/8. So now 4 3/8. All right. So now this line doesn't mean anything. That shows our angle and shows what our panel is going to look like. But rightfully, if you know your point here and you know your point here, and this is your base point as far as you're starting there, and this is flat all the way across. So you go 4 3/8 this way, you go 7.5 this way, and then once you get your stop points, you just connect them, and that's your angle. So you don't even need, I don't even need to know that angle, it doesn't matter. So now what we're going to do is figure out where this notch is. So we know from the edge of our door latch, we're going to give ourselves just a little bit of space. Honestly, just to be on the safe side, 12 3/8 is going to be good on that. Alright, so we drew our notch in the panel, so we know from here to here we're 12 3/8. Bink, bink. Draw a little line, a little bit of a tree right there. Alright, so now you get two different ways. You can measure from here to here, you know, from the edge of your panel to here, or where you actually truly don't know exactly where we're stopping our panel here without doing some measurements and marking on the truck. We still know that this latch is our base. So we got 12 3/8 on this side, and then we could do, honestly, 14 3/8 will be good. So now we know that notch is 2 inches, because 2 3/8 to 14 3/8 is 2 inches. So draw another line on down. So this one here is 14 3/8, which again tells us our notch is 2 inches. So now we can measure how thick that notch is, and 1/2 inch would be pretty good. So draw a little line over there. 1/2 inch is good. Alright, so that's our basic border of what the panel is. Now, I'm a big fan of dimple dies, honestly. So I'm going to throw some dimple dies in here, and then I'll show you how we do that. So we'll move on to the computer on the CNC table. We'll get this thing done. Alright guys, so we're in the office. I'm gonna pull up MiniCAD, and then I'm gonna show you how we draw it in the system. Alright, so down here it says grid. This is your grid size. Right now I have it 0.20 inches, or 0.2 inches. So we're probably gonna leave that for now. So I'm gonna zoom out as far as I can. If you go out too far, it'll change the dimensions of the grid. It'll eventually go to like 2 inches, and if you have it like 10 inches, when you zoom out so big, it'll go to just 1 inch. Alright, so again, we'll do our baseline. We know on the very back to the radiator support, it is 28 inches. So I'm gonna start up top. I'm gonna build it just how I look at it on the truck. A little easier that way, especially when you're trying to envision of what you're doing. So we'll go way back here. See, sometimes it's not quite long enough. So sometimes you gotta zoom out just a little bit more. Alright, peek. Alright, so now let's go over 28. And then once you get your 28, you know that's your longest length. You can always zoom back in. Boom. And again, this is not, I'm not saying, hey, do it like me. I'm just saying, hey, this is how we do it. I do things very simple in many ways, just because it's easier on me. It's also easier to explain to my guys when they do something as well. Alright, so on the hood latch side, it's 7.5. I forgot. Jump over. I can't do that. So I'll just change my grid, and that's a cool thing. You can go change your grid as you build. That way you can change your dimensions. So 7.5. Sometimes it's just easier to get a better, more accurate reading that way. 4 3/8, which is 4.3 is pretty close. Alright, so obviously where I changed the grid back down to 0.10 inches, and I'm going to go back to 0.2, those dots are not going to line in the grid anymore because the grid is based off of 0.2, not 0.1. But I'm doing this in such that I can see the whole thing again, and where those dots have been set, I can still connect those dots. So go back to using a straight line, highlight the dot, drag it over the other dot, boom, done. So now we have our border. So we're getting back into some 3/8 stuff, so I'm going to jump back over into 0.10 grid, which I'm zoomed out to right now, so now it's in inches. But as you zoom in, it will correct itself once it sees fit. There we go. Got that borderline. Alright, so now we're going to do our notch. So we know on the first side it's 12 3/8, which is 12.3 will be fine. And then it's another 2 inches over. Boom. So there's our points for our notch. We know the notch was 1/2 inch. So we can do a square notch, but that notch is slightly slanted. So to complement it, I'll make my squared off right now. So that's the notch. That gives me a little bit of room on both sides. But to complement the angles of that groove and that radiator support, I'm going to go over just a little bit. You don't have to measure the angle. If you just have an angle against an angle, it looks that much more complemented and that much more custom and fitted. So keep in mind this is super tiny. So now, so to erase like the edges here, I'll just grab the scissors, delete in the corner so it deletes everything. Delete my line. Bam. We now have our panel. Alright, so that's it. That's our panel. So now you can go into building your lip, which honestly I'm going to do a test cutout to make sure everything looks good. I don't care to do test cutouts. Yes, in many ways it's a waste of material, but if you have some just really thin steel, we're going to cut this out of aluminum, but we'll use some really thin steel. It's super cheap, and to me it's worth it. I'm confident that this will fit just fine, but I'm the type of guy that I like to measure 5 times before cutting. Well, I can't necessarily measure, I have to cut this out to test fit it. So I'm all for wasting, $3 worth of steel at most to make sure this panel is going to be worth doing, especially when we're going to use the aluminum to finish it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put some dimple die cutouts in it. That way, if I don't like the initial test fit and cut, I can always go in and change. So I'm probably going to use a 2 inch, 1 3/4, and 1.5 inch die. So first of all, so we got 28 inches. You can break that down pretty easy as far as how many you can put in there. I'm thinking we're going to use 4. So with that being said, I'm going to probably go to the center of the panel, but I'm going to match it all the way through with the angle. So this is 7.5, which 7.5 would be, half of 7.5 would be 3 3/4. So, ooh, I see an error. Well, I messed up, so this is good for you guys. So, if this line was perfectly straight, like it should be, you'd see the line going, the white line going through my black line all the way through. Well, me rushing and trying to get through the video, I noticed that there's not a consistent white line through my black line, which tells me I'm off a touch, which probably would have been fine when I gave myself a little bit of room, but that's not what we do. So we're going to go back, remove it, start over. So we know it's 7.5. Boom. Consistent white line through the black line. We're straight again. Alright, but now I can go ahead and put my center point in for my line I'm going to draw to run my dimple dies in. So we set 3 3/4. I'm trying to think which side I want it to run more. I'm not going to get crazy with accuracy on this. It's either going to be 3.7, 3.8. Let's just run 3.7. A little bit smaller, that way we'll have more of a tighter fit towards the radius for just a touch. You'll never notice it. So we're not going to do 3.7 here. We're also just going to do half here. So this is 4.3, which would be technically 215, but we'll probably just do 210, which means we're 0.05 off, but at the same time we're 0.05 off on the other side as well. So that should still see a nice consistent match of the angle. So zoom back out. We're going to connect our dots again. Boom. Boom. There's that one. Connect this one. That's it. Angle looks pretty good. Happy with that. So that's going to be our center points for our dimple dies. So now I know this is 28. Yeah, totally messed that up. So I want to do 4 dimple dies. So half of 28 would be 14. Half of 14 is 7. So we need to do 7-inch runs for our dots. Which actually I'm going to give us 3. Don't critique me too hard on all this. I'm kind of just running through this for you guys. But we are going to use this, so it's still going to be nice. It can be a little bit off the mark, but relatively you want to stay right at 7. But if it's 7.01, no one will ever notice it. So that being said, now we have 3 marks. So we do 3 dimple dies. We can do all 3 the same size. We can step it down. I don't know what I'll do yet. Let's do big ones. Let's run with it. Alright, so while cutting out the holes for your dimple die, so you don't have to hole saw them, but you could hole saw them if you didn't have, you know, something to cut a hole out with, like plasma cutter. It is based off of radius. Radius is half of your circumference, which would mean if we're doing a 2-inch hole, we're only going to do a radius of 1 inch. So that's 101. That should be pretty close. We'll see what happens if we step it out just a touch more. Be 110. But you gotta think about it, that's twice on overall. So it's just 110 on this side. So if it's 110 on this side, that means it's actually 220, which is almost 2 1/4, which will give you a big gap and you won't get a real strong dimple die. So we're gonna keep it nice and tight at 101. 101. 101 again. Alright. Go back. Cut out your center lines. Bam. That was with a B, not a D. Boom. Alright. So we're going to zoom out, look at the overall. I like it. So for just extra insurance, talk about measuring 5 times, you still grab your point. Grab your point. We know that needs to be 28. Cool. That's right. That needs to be 4.3. That's right. Over here. Boom. 7.5. That's right. Like I said, we don't need to even know what this angle or this measurement is, because as long as we know from here to here is fine, here to here is fine, and this is a perfectly straight line all the way across, nothing will change. Got a notch in there. We can always double check our notch. 2.3, should be 4.3, 14, yep. Alright, so now just save as. We're going to do C10, rad, filler plate. Alright, let's go to the CNC table. Alright guys, so we're at the CNC table. I'm going to show you how we just get it all set up to pull. So, go into My Plasma CNC program. Alright, so it gives me access to my table. The biggest thing is when you put your sheet up there, you're just gonna measure from end to end on your sheet. And as long as you have, you know, within a 1/16 usually is my tolerance. That lets you know that your sheet's all the way across straight, as long as your edge of that sheet is straight. So, that was in the way. I'm just gonna go over here to the edge of the panel where I want to cut. Bring the head down. Very tip. Here, go in the program, pull up the program, done. Make sure my lead's in and out. Sometimes, if you're running this program recognizes what you're trying to do. So a lot of programs you have to actually put in your own leads ins and outs, which is your lead in is where the head of the torch starts and then it works its way out. So it knows that we're trying to save this panel, but these holes we're cutting out are holes. They're not like filler plates that we're actually trying to save. So you can actually control where that head actually starts at, so that way it doesn't get too close to your edge. So we'll have it bring it out, and then but see if it's doing something I don't want it to, like it thinks that I'm trying to save that hole, it would look like that. And all you need to do is just change your offset to inside or outside, and then boom, it already knows it. So, and then the 0, 1, 2, 3 is where it starts. Starts off at 0, then it goes to 1, then it goes to 2, then it goes to 3. That tells you where the cut process is. Obviously, the very last thing is you need to cut out is the border. That way that plate stays all in place, so when you're cutting it doesn't try to move. So, happy with that. Check it off. Good to go. I'm gonna tell the head it's at the very top left of the program. Make sure you always zero out and just hit play. Alright guys, that's the panel that we cut out. So we're going to do a little bit of test fitting. Alright, all in all, it's exactly how I want it to look. It's a little high right now. It's actually hitting this AC bracket. So now I know that if you have an AC on your vehicle, that not one panel will fit both sides. But I'm willing to bet if I flip it over, it'll fit the other side. And it does. So that's how it's going to sit. And see, by doing this, I can almost cheat, and it'll tell me how high I can go. So ½ inch would be completely safe there, and then we can go up to 2.5 there, and then run it all the way 2.5 all the way across. So then now, so we know ½ inch to 2.5. And to get our point to where we start to slope down, 15.5 would be fine. So 15.5 would bring us right in this point. So 15.5 over at 2.5 tall, taper down to ½ inch. And that's it. And then we can use this guy here as a template to notch out for the AC condenser. All right guys, so we kind of changed the design up a touch. I threw a couple more holes in it. Kept the spacing before, and all I did is where we had them 7 inches apart, I went to 3.5 to put another one in between them all. And then of course we got, this is the backlit that goes attach itself to the radiator support, and then I have it marked, I already know, so it's 2.5 here, half here, so then when I put it on the brake, I'll break it and bend it, and that's where we're good. So we're gonna wrap this video up by showing you guys how to dimple die. So it's super simple, but remember, I decided to go with a 2-inch dimple die. So we made these holes 2 inches, just a touch, actually 2.01. So with that being said, this is how it's going to sit in the truck. Of course, again, this is going to be bent up. I want my dimple dies going facing down, so you got to make sure that just the donut ring is actually the one that's facing on the ground. So super simple. We just use a Harbor Freight press. Put that in there like that. And if you want to, you could use another one to make it the space, so you're not having to crank on it a bunch to get it to go down there. But bring it down. You want to press pretty much in the center. The looser your hole is to the die, the more being in the center matters. So as you start to press, you're going to see the metal kind of bow up. So you see the bow. Every pump of the jack, it bows up. Then it's going to get to a hard point, which is right there. Steel makes it worse, but this is aluminum. Then you press on it, you'll see that aluminum start to lay back down. And you get to that final pump where it's just real hard to pull. Release. You don't have to go all the way back up. That way you don't have to pump as much doing it again. Remove your die. Bam. So we'll go on down. I'm just rolling through this so you guys can actually see how fast this can be done. And again, you don't have to use a CNC table to make those holes. A hole saw works just as good. That's how I started out, and I'm just fortunate enough to get in a position where I can buy dies and have a machine such to do it to make my life a little easier. Reinvesting into what you do will go a very far way, because then you get things done faster. This is the basis of making more money. I know I missed one. I'm gonna go back and get it. I'm going to pull out that press just a touch so we can get this last one done. Alright. That panel is fully dimple died. So now we'll just take it on the brake. We'll break it up here. This clears our notch, and then we'll just mark our holes. So I did go over it with some 180, kind of get rid of some of the roughness and then the burring on the edges, and then I'll probably go over a little bit more time, and then other than that, it goes to chuck to get powder coated, and then it is ready for install. But Appreciate everybody. If you have any more questions or concerns, reach out. I'll comment and attach it and go over it with you all. If you have any more ideas of what you'd like to see, just let us know. Thank you.
Started at the bottom, but I'm next guy. Went from top 5 to the best 5. And if last year left you unimpressed, I hope you know that everything before was just a test drive.